Okay, holy crap, there are a lot of these. Thank you all for your participation. What's up, humanoids of the internet? Mark with Kardavox Academy here, and today we're doing our second TikTok metal vocal reaction video. This time, people tagged me in their TikToks, or other TikToks, that they specifically wanted me to see, so that way I'm not just sort of stumbling through a hashtag. I'm actually seeing stuff that people want my eyes on. If you're new to the channel, again, my name is Mark. I'm a metal vocalist myself. I'm in a band called Kardavox. We released an album on Metal Blade Records earlier this year. And I'm also a vocal coach specializing in harsh vocals. I do give clean singing lessons if it's more foundational. But my specialty is really teaching people how to, safely and efficiently. I've been doing metal vocals for about 14 years myself. That's my full-time job, that and this. So I'm excited to see these TikToks to see what people are doing. I was really impressed last time. I actually want to take a quick second to address some questions that people had on the last TikTok video. If you're not interested in this part, you can just skip ahead to the reactions. I won't blame you, but there were a couple things that came up that I think are very worth talking about. The first was sometimes people were saying like, wow, this guy's like way too nice to all these people. And I want to give an example of how my mind works as an instructor, right? Let's say that you were in the kitchen and you were making an extremely delicious beef stew, right? I walk in and I see that your knife work is really good and the beef that you're cutting up into cubes is awesome. If I walk in and I say, hey, you're doing a great job, that's not the same as me saying like your beef stew is done. I'm saying for the step that you are in your current journey, you're killing it, right? The reason I go with that is because I have found in teaching people face to face for, I think 4-ish years I've been doing it full time, encouragement goes a long way. Encouragement goes a long way. Now, paired with that, you have to point out like, okay, you're doing a great job. We need more work on your breath support. You're choking down on your distortion. But this one area that you're focused on, you're doing really well on, right? So I've just found encouragement and positive feedback to be a better teaching tool, so long as it's paired with, honest talk about where there are areas of opportunity. So part of the reason I had people tag me is because now, hopefully people are tagging me in their own videos. In this one, I'll be a little bit, I don't like not critical because I'm just like not a critical person, right? I don't think you can run a reaction channel if you are a critical person, right? Well, maybe you can. But I'm the type of person who, if I'm at a restaurant and I think the restaurant is absolute garbage, I'm just the type of person that I'm going to focus on the food that's there that I like. I might never go back, but like, damn, they've got really good ranch dressing. And that's kind of just what I choose to focus on so I don't have a bad time. Right. So with that being said, I am going to give some more constructive feedback if I hear it. But when I say to somebody who's clearly a beginner, wow, they're killing it. Like, I'm speaking to them at that point in their vocal journey. Obviously, if I was to put them up against, like a big, huge name vocalist, the comparison, you couldn't even draw a comparison, but like, that's like saying the sky is poo. Like the sky, did I just say the sky is poo? That's like saying the sky is blue. Like, well, obviously they're not as good as that person, but that's not useful, right? It's not useful for me to say like, oh, they've got a long ways to go till they get to XYZ vocalist. It's more useful for me to say like, hey, you're doing a really good job at this. And here's an area based on your current journey of where you are, where you could get a little bit better. So hopefully that kind of clarifies things. Also, another thing, if you just being in the metal vocal meta as I am, partially by choice and partially not by choice, oftentimes when people will say, well, that scream's not very good, they are talking about screams in the genre of music that they like, right? What is a good deathcore scream may have different criteria than something you would hear in melodeath or black metal or death metal, right? An old school false chord low may not be that popular in like the more modern, like very compressed, very pushed distortion that you hear in a lot of modern music. Does it mean it's bad or does it mean it's just a different genre? That's another question I think you should ask. If your first thought is to say like, well, that vocal sucks, it's like, does it suck or is it just not in a genre that you like? Because those are two very different things, right? A lot of the music that I react to on this channel, I don't personally like, but I have fun doing it because I focus on the strengths of the song. not necessarily whether or not I like it. It would be a lot less of an interesting channel if I just said I like the song or I don't like the song. I mean, anybody can do that, right? Okay, with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. And I'm just going to kind of go through. I won't be able to do, I got a ton of mentions, like tons. I'm not going to be able to do all of them, but I'm going to kind of go through and pick, and we'll go from there. So here we go, reacting to your TikToks, giving some advice where I can. Let's go. Okay, so this guy didn't actually tag me in his own TikTok. Somebody else tagged me in this TikTok. So I'm going to be a little softer on any sort of critical feedback that I give, because I don't know, like I kind of think I'm kind of a believer in like give it when it's asked for. You know what I mean? But I will point out any areas of opportunity that I hear. So this is, I think it's probably supposed to be pronounced Priesthood. Let's see how this goes.
Dun, 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 dun. Yay, claps! Roll! We all observe! Triumph to escort! This is the longer, the ancient.
That's an important moment right there. That's a really important moment right there. So we're only halfway through it, but I want to give my initial thoughts. First and foremost, I'm really impressed by how little extrinsic strain I see. I don't see, like, this visually looks extremely relaxed and extremely easy. You can see the tongue curling, make resonance work for him, right? The boominess of the room helps, but you can see like in this position right here, yeah, the tongue is pulled back, the jaw is dropped, the lips are slightly pursed, the jaw looks relaxed and sort of hinged back and down, right? That's great. As far as like mouth shape, tongue position, embouchure, like no complaints. This is awesome. I also think the distortion sounds really crisp and really clean. We're like leaning on some fry tones here. That's really good. There is one thing that we can hear though. I want you to listen to the tone, and it'll slightly change as time goes.
Roll! We all observe! Triumph to escort! This is the longer. The ancient ones have returned to replicate and calling. Possess the rhythm and the mother for all this summer. They approach, silent in a trance. The blood against whose foreheads of the brain waves. The human orpus is coming.
And we're back. I'll talk about what I'm hearing in a second, but now, like, we're kind of clicked back in. Yeah, that was really good. That was awesome. So first and foremost, as far as like resonance is concerned, like everything here is beautiful, right? The dropping of the mouth, like I said, the curling of the tongue, low tones being created here versus here. I'm a big fan of that. Some people disagree with that. So mote it be, but I'm a really big fan of utilizing your mouth and the back of your mouth as your primary resonance control and your primary like depth of scream control versus dropping the larynx. A little bit of larynx dropping going, but it's not like pulling the larynx down to the suprasternal notch. Like you're not pulling the larynx down to the top of the collarbone, right? There is only one area of opportunity that I hear in this space. Now it is okay for screams to have vocal tone behind them. Oftentimes with my students, I start them with a voiceless scream, which is admittedly a little bit harder. I am kind of giving them a more difficult task out of the gate, but my goal for them is for them to be able to control their vocal folds being off and on, not rely on their vocal cords being on. The true chord phonation, the tone phonation that I heard under here was totally fine. Around the center point, it started to break and crack, and it sounded to like waver a little bit, right? It sounded like to pop. Obviously, one thing I want you to keep in mind is all of these are very small clips of vocalists that I'm listening to in the moment. The best way to critique a vocalist is to really know them as a person, their relationship with their voice, and their vocal history as well. But my first thought is that over the course of the scream, the vocal muscles are slightly squeezing and slightly tensing as a result of better breath support, or as the result of needing better breath support, right? One of the most common things that you'll hear in vocalists who are really good, like I think this guy sounds great. I would love, and again, I kind of risk ignorance here because maybe like he's in a really well-known band and I'm checked out of it. I don't know, but I would love to hear this guy's voice on a track because I think it would sound killer. But one thing you'll hear that's really common that I struggled with for a long time is that the scream sounds awesome, and then you can slowly hear the vocal muscles compensating. And it's important to understand you will not always feel the vocal muscles compensating. Some of the primary muscles that we use in our vocal cords are the thyroarytenoid, cricothyroid, and transverse arytenoid muscle. And they're very small, they're very thin, and we can't always feel them being used, right? And so we have to go by sound. And the fact that it went from like a sort of like background noise, like sort of a texture, to like a crackling, popping wheeze, that's an area where I would say more breath work may help with that. And we want to be careful whenever our vocals have a wheezy, like sound to them, because that is a way we can cause vocal damage over time. But this guy definitely is not a beginner. He sounds great. I would take a peek at some breath control if I were to talk to him. And, maybe his breath control is fine. It could be something different, but that's my first thought. And that's what I would start with. So good job, Priesthood. I don't know how to say it. But yeah, sounds killer. Okay, cool. We got Christian Reynolds 7. He tagged me in his own TikTok. So looking for feedback. Also, I love the DBZ shirt. We actually have Dragon Ball Z themed Kardavox Academy merch. I'm wearing a Kardavox Academy shirt now. You can see she's casting a vocal spell, breath support, resonance, phonation. Very cool. Check out our merch shop. I'm sorry, I have to plug it, and I never know when the right time to plug it is. I always feel like kind of a jerk plugging my own stuff. So there's the plug, KardaVoxAcademy.com. Sorry, Christian, this is about you. Let's check out your vocals. But yeah, love the vibe. Love like the DBZ baseball tee. That's cool. All right, 40 seconds. Let's check it out. Okay, so tone sounded really cool. I love the fact that you're using a little bit of a tunnel to sort of beef up the sound of your fry tone. Very cool, good technique. Now, sometimes I think people overuse tunnel throat a little bit, but like for a 40-second clip that is about exhibiting that, it totally makes sense. I also would say I like the level of gurgle as well. Like sometimes we have fry tones that sound like pure TV static, and I think that sounds awesome. And sometimes we have fry tones that have a little bit of like a arytenoidal pop and wiggle into them, and you certainly have that here. It sounds very wet. It sounds very tight, not overly tightened, but it's a very concise, like paper ripping, like type of tone. Now, there is one big area of improvement that I would point out here. It's kind of the low-hanging fruit of advice, but it's really important, is that there's a ton of chest breathing going on. Shoulders up, chest lifting, boom, pushing down when it's time for the scream. Now, oftentimes on the internet, we hear that that's not ideal, but I haven't really heard a lot of people talk about why. So I'd like to tell you why real quick. So it works, clearly, like breathing up into the top of your chest, puffing up, punching down with your shoulders and chest. Clearly it works. Clearly you can make a cool distortion with that. Like, this sounds great. I think that this sounds really good. You've got a lot of nice nasally masky resonance. So you're hitting all these points. Why stop? Why change it? A couple of reasons. The first one is, let's just think about holding a big steak in your hand, like a big, like New York strip steak in your hand, right? It's got some weight. It's got some heft to it, right? Well, we got two of those right here. Right? We got two big old steaks right here. You know what I mean? And then we've also got bone, fat, sinew. We've got our whole anatomy here. Now, listen, I don't know how much a chest weighs. Obviously, it varies person to person, but it's not light, right? And our lungs are basically just big old airbags. They're just big old airbags. That's what they are. You know what I mean? And so if I'm breathing and lifting all this, right, gravity is going to pull that back down as I release. And there's going to be a ton of pressure on top of the lungs here. What's going to happen is your air is going to have a tendency to rush out really fast. And if you have to control it, you're going to have to fight that airflow. And that may cause you to have unneeded tension up here, right? So you have all of this pressure punching down, right? You're sort of like curb stomping your lungs, so to speak. And then all that pressure building up under here. Sometimes people will say, well, Mark, I've been breathing like this for 14 years, 15 years, and I don't feel any pressure. That's because you're used to it. You've been used to having to overly squeeze your voice for so long. It doesn't it doesn't feel like much anymore, right? If instead, right, we breathe down and low, right, and we do our vocals by squeezing the abdominal muscles. See the top of my head sort of bouncing a little bit? Hey, 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 hey. It's because I'm squeezing the abdominal muscles. Yeah, you can release, and there's the it's like almost no work. And I know I can be very, very sure, partially because I'm doing more of a false chord influence sound, but I can be very, very sure that I am not putting unnecessary stress underneath my vocal cords. And then I can, from that, be very, 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 very sure that over time, I'm not going to be like, oh shit, my vocal cords are swollen. Oh no, I've got a little bump on those vocal cords that I would rather not have. One of the biggest causes of vocal damage is too much subglottal pressure and punching against the vocal cords. So I would say, think about down low breathing. Think about expanding the ribs and the abdominal muscles, right? Keep those abdominal muscles soft and squishy when you breathe in. Avoid the chest pulling. But as far as the way your scream sounds, it's killer. It sounds great. You're doing a great job. Next, this is actually one of my students. This is actually one of my students, and I'm really excited. And this is perfect, actually, coming from what we talked about, because this is something that Henry and I worked on for a very long time, was breathing down and low, opening up the ribs, avoiding that shoulder punch and that shoulder push, right, for like a really nice, even, clean tone. Now, he's got great vocals. We've worked on him a lot together. We've put in, well, he's put in the work. I just kind of told him what to do. He took all that information and went and practiced with it. But let's go ahead. Let's check out what Henry's doing here. I'll make a man out of you vocal cum. Okay, cool. So we're doing some Disney death metal. Let's hear it. Cool. Okay, awesome. A lot of cool things to talk about here. I'll try to keep it kind of concise. Obviously, we had either you screaming live to some backing tracks or you lip syncing over the tracks. That's totally fine, by the way. Sometimes people get a little spicy. They're like, oh, well, they're just lip syncing. And it's like, well, yeah, you know what? That doesn't mean they didn't do the original takes. And also, like, let me tell you, as somebody with like a 3-month-old screaming in the other room, if I upload some vocal covers, there may be some tracks that I have to lip sync over unless y'all want to hear Crying Baby. Like, deal with it. Lip syncing does not invalidate a vocalist. So if you put that in my comments, just stop. Let's talk about the actual vocals that we hear in this spot. So there's been a lot of improvement. We're kind of in a break in our lessons now, but I think he's coming back in a little bit. We worked together for I think about a year, but one of the main issues that we worked on was a lot of voice cracking, right? There was a lot of cracking of the voice in the screams, which I heard like once or twice, but not very prominently. And then also all of this really high, tall breathing that was causing a lot of strain and squeeze, right? I'm hearing a lot more evenness of tone, even like shifting the scream a little bit higher, like sort of snarling it out. Good. Oh no, my hairspray glued my headphones to my hair. A lot of shifting from that, like, you know, right, like pulling the scream upward, adding some nuance through timbre. I think it's actually right here. This was kind of tough for a while, but you just buttered through it. Okay, kind of the opposite direction, but that's something that that was really kind of a big goal as well. I can hear that you're using a lot of the mouth shape versus the throat to create that tone. Right? Good job there. lots of improvement. This is a lot of where your vocals were when you first started lessons, but now a lot cleaner, a lot smoother, and a lot more command. When you were a cappella there was like a little bit of a voice crack, but that's the only one I really noticed too heavily. Still some shoulder, still some chest, right? None of us are going to be perfect, but a lot more down, low breathing. This is a lot more of like the TV static scream that I was talking about, and it sounds killer, and it's really good for layering as well. So yeah, this guy, he sends me clips, I don't know, probably every couple weeks. And every time I feel like you're a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. So yeah, very good. Very excited to hear where you're going. I feel like I heard something cool at the end here. Let me. Killer outro. Awesome. Especially those like low guttural tones at the end there. I will say that one voice crack. So voice cracks don't always come from breath support. Sometimes they come from adding a little bit of like quack to our screams. So for me to quack, 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 I have to kind of really tense up the top of my throat, and that can add vocal breaks and vocal cracks to our screams. Right. And the reason that oftentimes people do that is because twang can actually be really beneficial to our screams. They can really take like a sort of a bland high and turn it. They can really make a high sing. They can really make a high do well. Same thing with lows and mids, right? Adding a little bit of twang to our screams is really good. But sometimes rather than right, with our screams, we want to really crank on that twang. Like you wouldn't use that much on like your singing voice, right? Right? Sometimes instead of people will go by closing the top of the throat versus right? So something to bear in mind. But overall, this is a really huge improvement. It sounds great. And I think you're doing a killer job. Think about down and low, leaving the throat open and relaxed, and you'll be cruising. Next. Okay, perfect. We've got Nathan. I don't know how to say half of these names. But the usernames are also creative. First thing, love the hair. Damn, that volume choice. Absolutely flawless. Not a whole lot in the tags here, so I'm not really sure what to expect, but let's check it out. We've got 33 seconds.
I will not run. Try a smaller break. Easily they as they suffocate in silence.
Nice. Pretty solid. So a little bit of that chest stuff here as well, but I want to talk about something different because at this point in the video, I don't want to see the whole thing over and over again. So I actually don't have a lot of really specific like exercises that I would give you, but I would think about adding some contrast to your voice. First of all, your distortion sounds really, really cool. It's a little bit squashed. Your vocal tract sounds a little bit small. That can be easy to do because sometimes when we're going for like a, right, we'll think that we have to make it as narrow as possible. But oftentimes we want to narrow the opening and leave the back, narrow the exit and leave the back more open. So instead of hear that versus right, one is going to cut through really nicely and be a lot more usable like in a mix. It's also going to be a lot easier because you're not going to have to push so hard to get the air out and forward. So I would think about on a lot of your sounds allowing the back of the mouth to be more open and then using the front of the mouth for all the cool like articulatory stuff. Right? In the back, nice and open. And then one thing that's really cool about this breakdown, and you were definitely leaning into, you were definitely doing a good job, is that there's so much contrast, right? Ben Dura, he's super low, super high, mid, ba. All the screams sound really distinct from each other, right? And you definitely were doing that. I would think about just adding more, right? Adding more. So instead of your low being like here, maybe instead of your high being and a lot of that is going to come from the space, allowing the resonance chambers to kind of do their thing. Now, here's the fun of metal vocals is that we can just play around. And if it sounds cool and if it's healthy, it's good. Like we can do literally whatever we want as long as it's within those two criteria. So this was a really good attempt. I think your distortion is definitely in the right direction. It's in the right spot. I would just add some contrast, kind of just like in the spirit of the song, right? Like when he starts, I will not rest. Right? Like just that deep to high. And if you're having trouble with those spaces, just think about a little higher each time, inching forward. And then over time, you'll have a lot of that contrast. So yeah, that's the only thing. Just more of like a polish than like a technique space. Focus on low and out breathing and adding some contrast to your vocals. Next. All right, so in this mention, it said, Kardavox Academy, do you do vocals while doing the laundry? That's what I do sometimes. Maggot Crawler. Fucking love that name. Let's check it out. To answer your question, doing laundry, not so much. For me, it's doing dishes, sort of, sometimes. The layout of my house is not really good for just doing random vocals. There's not any place where I'm not like bugging somebody. So it's oftentimes in the car, or like I can't move this camera. There's a closet. There's like a big walk-in closet over here. Sometimes I'll go in if the time is right. But anyways, let's check this out. Laundry vocals. Let's go. So first of all, that's pretty good, right? That's pretty good. And this is actually a really good example. I talk with my students about practice all the time. I don't really know a single adult who can be like, oh, yes, it is now 2:15 in the afternoon. I will do my 45 minutes of unfocused, uninterrupted practice today. I don't live that life. I don't know if you do. But that sort of time, you kidding me? Shoo, I don't have that, right? So oftentimes it's really important to insert practice into parts of our day that we already have. Like, so Maggot Crawler here, he is seemingly uninterrupted while doing laundry. Great. Practice while you do laundry. I love that, right? Practice in the shower. Like, listen, most of us don't get, unless you have toddlers. And from what I hear, I'll have a toddler here in a couple of years. He's only 3 months, but soon. Most of the time, from what I understand, unless you have toddlers, nobody bugs you while you're taking a shit, right? So, careful with your pushing, but you can practice resonance movement there. Like, I'm serious, right? You get the practice in where you can. Now, as far as tone and mouth shape, that's one thing like that I kind of want to drive home with these, is that most in the metal world, right, the metal vocal world, and specifically like the corner of the metal vocal world that we inhabit, with screams that are all texture, all distortion, or at least heavy texture and distortion, usually people who have been working on it for a long time do well with mouth shape and actual grit. And then areas of improvement tend to be throat tension or breath support, right? There was a spot here that exemplified it perfectly. There was a scream where we heard an audible, right? And then the scream sounded killer. And then they went for another one, no audible inhale, and there was a pretty significant vocal crack. I'm going to try to find it. If it takes too long, I'll cut it out. Give me a second. Yeah, right here. So we have a nice inhale. We have an inhale. Even, clean distortion. Now, not really a noticeable breath. There's a tiny little bit, but not really a noticeable breath. Hear that little voice crack? The reason that happens is because there's not enough of a reserve in our, there are, like I said before, multiple reasons why we can have a vocal crack or a dropout of distortion. Oftentimes it's a breath support thing, right? Our voice will squeeze in response to not having enough air, and that causes a little bit of a vocal break, a vocal crack, whatever. And we can use the vocal break for certain screams, right? It's not like vocal break equates bad, but it's not this kind of scream that we're listening to, right? So one thing that we want to focus on when we're doing our screams is we want to focus on, and this is really good for singing too, holding our ribs out. So when I breathe in, my ribs expand, and then when I scream, I actually want my ribs to stay out and my abdominal muscles to engage, but not collapse, right? What this is going to do, the ribs moving out is going to create more space, like not horizontally, vertically? Yeah, horizontally, right? In the base of the lungs. And then by squeezing the abdominal muscles, right, which you don't like, I want to make clear, like with your clean singing, you don't always have to clamp down on your abdominal muscles. This isn't a technique that works for every vocal style, right? The ribs out is always great, but when we engage in our abdominal muscles, bearing down, hey, causing that like little head bob, right? What we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating a very even air pressure here, right? We're just creating a tiny little bit of air pressure, and like if you squeeze a can of compressed air, it's really even, right? Because physics is doing the work. Likewise, when I'm here, I breathe in, expand the ribs, open up. I'm really just letting the air pull the scream out of me versus me push the scream out, right? And then when we have to breathe in again, if our ribs have stayed out, we can kind of just take a little sip, a little, right? Open up those abdominal muscles again, boom, and get right back into it. One exercise I really like for this is, let me remember it. I haven't talked about it in a while. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Yeah. So you can do it with any vocal you want. I like to do it with a high, but you breathe in and you have to kind of be used to holding your ribs out. So, and what you're going to do is you're going to scream 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Like that. And so if I do it with a scream, right?
1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4.
And you can just kind of do that over and over and over again, and re-enter your speaking voice with no issue. But yeah, overall, I know I talked about this one for a lot. Love the tone, love the way that you're fitting in the practice. Make sure that each scream has a nice breath in front of it. And if you don't have time for another breath, make sure you've held those ribs out and refreshed with a quick little sip inward, right? So keep tagging me in these. These are a lot of fun to do. I have a lot of fun with this. So keep tagging me in your TikToks. Keep tagging me in your vocal journey. I love being a part of it. I love seeing it. Check out KardaVoxAcademy.com for information on lessons, as well as cool Kardavox Academy merch. This one's probably my favorite, right? Because like, look how cool she is. She's like casting a spell, right? And it's the Vox trifecta, right? That's the name of the spell, Vox trifecta: breath support, phonation, resonance, right? Awesome. Anyway, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for checking out the channel, like, share, subscribe, blah, blah, blah. Many thanks. Much love. I'm out.